welcome to Wonders Weird and Wild. Today we are covering a fairly in-depth guide of what it would take to start a colony in space. As always, if you have any topics that you would like to suggest for future videos, please drop them in the comments and I'll try to get around to those. And on with today's topic. So in this video, we'll be covering basic space necessities, being shelter, food, water, air, and energy. I'm not worrying about getting out to space wherever you want to start your colony. I don't care about that. You can figure out how to do that how you want. But what I'm trying to figure out is how to live once you get out there. Starting with shelter, you need a basic, airtight, insulated, heated area that can be set up very quickly so that you can live almost immediately in that area so that you don't have to live in your spacecraft the whole time. There are many ways to go about this. You personally could set it up, which is the worst way to go about it. That would cause you to have a ton of oxygen used outside trying to set that up. You could bring robots along with you to help set it up, which is a much more beneficial option because it uses far less oxygen, which is a precious resource at this point, and it allows for the colony to be set up much faster. Now, with the actual shelters, you need to make sure that you have facilities for all of the other necessities that I listed before, and that you have interconnected tunnels. You have to make sure that you have a tunnel system to connect all of these different rooms that serve all of these different purposes, whether it be housing or sanitation or food production or energy generation. You have to make sure that you have tunnels connecting all of them. Next up on our docket is food. So food, you may think that the immediate solution would just be to plant crops. And yes, that's absolutely true. It is a viable solution. It produces oxygen in addition to food. However, you also need a ton of soil for that. I'm not saying that it's not entirely viable, but it needs much logistic planning in advance. Another possibility that you might want to consider at this point is hydroponics, using largely water to grow your crops, not much soil. This is useful because you'll need water anyways to bring on the trip, so it reduces the resources that you actually have to bring. Now, if you want a fully rounded diet and you want protein in there as well, you will likely have to bring animals along with you. In this case, probably one of the best solutions to this is bringing along small rodent-type animals, whether that be squirrels or gophers or groundhogs or something along those lines. They may not be your favorite food in the world, but they absolutely lead to a fully rounded diet, and they're a much better alternative to bringing cows or something like that in a spaceship, unless you have an absolute ton of fuel. Next up on our list of necessities is water. So water is one of the most difficult ones to figure out here, because I'm assuming whatever planet you're going to does not have liquid water, as most don't, at least in our solar system. You're going to have to figure out a way to recycle all of your water. You will likely need modern filtration methods that allow larger particles to sink out of fluids in wastewater beforehand, and then you filter it out further using bacteria that eat fecal matter and such to then allow for that water to be cleaned. From there, as a further measure, because there are still chemicals sitting in that water, such as microplastics and others, you will likely need to distill that water, evaporate it, and then recondense it in a separate location. This will likely create water that is at least fair for drinking. Even so, there are processes that use water that are necessary for your space travel, and you will likely need to get deliveries of water somewhat regularly. The good news on this is that water is, although heavy, not sensitive to pressure. It is not damaged by increased pressure. This allows you to explore some very interesting low-cost methods of sending things to space that cannot be used for other resources, such as centrifugal launch, which is where you spin something very rapidly that can achieve exit velocity before even leaving the ground. Then it releases it, sends it into space, and you have your own spacecraft. Moving on to oxygen. Air is probably one of your most necessary resources. If you don't have oxygen for several minutes, some very bad things start to happen. So, what you want to do is make sure that you have a consistent supply of oxygen. Now, crops that you're using to plant your food, that you're using to produce food, are a very good starting solution for this. They convert your carbon dioxide that you're breathing out into oxygen that you can then breathe in. This starts a very good cycle. However, if you're having an entire colony, you may not be able to have enough crops to produce enough oxygen for the entire colony. What you then may want to do is bring other plants that will supplement your oxygen, namely, most likely, being algae of some kind. Algae are low resource intensive. They are very easy to travel with because you don't need that many. They replicate incredibly quickly. As a matter of fact, algae have been successfully used by researchers in Siberia to produce enough oxygen for a human to breathe. So it is an entirely viable solution in this case. So just remember, you may want to bring some algae with you. Finally, when you get to wherever you're going, you have to remember that you have to have energy. Energy will end up running all of your air distribution systems, all of your heating, all of your cooling, whichever the case may be, depending on whatever planet you're on, the temperature of that planet. Energy is vital. Now, for most vehicles and such that we've sent to space, the way that we've run them is that we've had solar panels that are attached to a lithium-ion battery, and they charge this battery constantly from solar energy, which then allows the rover that NASA sent to continue to function on a regular basis. Now, this works all well and good when you have a space rover, an environment that has no oxygen. But the thing is that lithium-ion batteries have a tendency to ignite and explode at the worst times. Now, when you're in a super cool, oxygen-free environment, this isn't a problem because there is no ignition that can occur without oxygen, and overheating is generally prevented by the super cold nature of the environment around. However, when you're in a temperature-controlled, high-oxygen environment in space, the last thing that you want to happen is for you to have a fire. I'm referring to in your living capsule. It is the last thing that you want to happen. This generally leads to the conclusion of using natural resources to produce mechanical energy. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean that you want to produce energy in a similar way to how we usually do here on Earth, using fossil fuels, turn something to then create energy that can be converted into electricity. And we don't just use fossil fuels here on Earth. We use nuclear energy. We use other various forms of energy. Depending on the gas composition of the atmosphere of whatever planet that you decided to colonize, you may be able to use something along the lines of nuclear fusion. However, that is not necessarily a reliable bet. You also may be able to use old-fashioned wind energy, using windmills to turn a shaft that then produces mechanical energy. You may be able to turn that into electrical energy to then operate your colony. Another option is to use external combustion engines. External combustion engines, which are also at times referred to as Stirling engines, use a temperature differential between one side of the engine and the other side of the engine to create a shifting pressure that allows for the drive of the engine. Using this, you can likely use solar energy to create this temperature differential, but you would need to, in order to make it highly efficient, cool the other end. Inversely, if you are on a colder planet, you automatically have this cooling aspect covered. You would likely need to use more lenses over a greater area to magnify the sunlight more to produce more of that heat gradient. I would like all of you to keep in mind that this is not a full and complete guide on how to survive in a colony in space. I know you are all planning to rush off to the unexplored regions of space to then set up a colony on an exoplanet. Just a disclaimer, if you just follow my advice, this will not work. You should have a fully researched and experienced colony construction professional helping you along the way. I am not your full guide. Anyhow, thank you all for listening. And as always, if you have any ideas for future videos, please comment them down below. And have a nice day.